Hello. I'm probably riding my bike. It's hard to wake up early for a trip, especially if you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. But when you're rewarded with a sunrise like this, it's definitely worth it. An early October morning with the fresh, crisp air, beautiful sunrise, and the twinkling lights of the buildings. I'm going on a trip, finally, with my Susie. Hwang Suji has been waiting for a trip outside Seoul to the mountains. And it's finally getting its chance. Usually on a trip I'm going to the express bus terminal, which is about a 10-minute ride from my house. But the town I'm going to doesn't have an express bus, so I'm heading out to the east bus terminal, which is about an hour's ride away. Luckily, mostly along the Han River bike path. A familiar ride with the Lotto Tower in the distance, going past the way to HBC Coffee. A familiar face on this sticker. It's been a little while since I had a trip on my bike outside of Seoul. I was meant to go and join monthly bikepacking a few weeks ago, but the torrential rain put me off. They still went. Hopefully I'll get to join another one soon. Here we are at the East Seoul bus terminal, or Dong Seoul bus terminal, right by the Han River bike path. It's quite an old terminal, one of the classic 70s or 80s bus terminals that are dotted around Korea. Whee! I'm not sure if they're going to knock it down or it's being renovated, but a lot of the shops were boarded up. It's pretty early in the morning, but it's still very busy. The hustle and bustle of Seoul. I always have a sense of nervous excitement getting these buses. Sometimes I'm worried if there's going to be tons of other bikes and I won't have space for mine. Or the bus driver might be having a bad day and decide, I don't want bikes on my bus today. I saw a lot more people than usual travelling with bikes this morning. So that made me more nervous about them being on my bus. But luckily I was the only one. The bus to Taebaek is here. Let's get on. I haven't travelled with Susie Hwang Suji on the bus yet. And with my naive optimism, I thought I could fit it in one go. But it's a lot bigger than any of my other bikes. It's got bigger wheels. It's a lot taller. So I took the front wheel off and squeezed it in. Have a safe trip. And see you in the mountains in Taebaek. The bus left perfectly on time. And 3 hours later of scrolling on my phone, I arrived in Taebaek, perfectly on time. Let's check on Hwang Suji. All intact. I think it depends how well you pack the bike and put it in. No scratches. But it's kind of inevitable. If you keep doing these trips by bus, you might get some scratches on your bike, but that's okay. It's better to use your bike and get scratches than keep it pristine and not ride it. What's the point of having it if you're not going to ride it? All good to go. But let's check out this bus terminal. I guess it's the same architect. It's got the same ceiling as the one in Seoul. A lot of the bus stations around Korea have this same vibe. Although some of them are getting updated and knocked down. I quite like the old school charm. The only difference is a digital kiosk instead of a person to buy the tickets. Today's ride doesn't go through many towns and villages, so I better pick up something to eat. And what better than some kimbap? The kimbap price has gone up a lot in Korea, but here was two for 5,000 won, about $3 or $4, I guess. When I first moved into Korea in 2009, you could still get, some places still had kimbap for about 1,000 won. And I knew a guy who was saving really hard, and his currency seemed to be kimbap, so anything he would compare, he's like, if a beer cost 5,000 won, he'd be like, that's like 5 kimbaps. How can you spend that much money? He basically had kimbap for breakfast, lunch and dinner. I'm a big fan, but I'll just save it for my rides. So this is the city of Taebaek in Gangwon-do, very small mountain city. I've never been here before, so it's nice to ride through and see what the town's like. It's quite sleepy. It's still in the morning, so it's kind of relaxed. I won't be on the roads much, because the ride I've got planned today is mostly on gravel roads. Last autumn I did some of this path with the monthly bikepacking crew, but we didn't get to do all of the ride that was planned, so I always had in my mind that I would come back for this ride. And since I built Hwangsuji, this is the ride that I had in mind that I wanted to do first. I've got fairly wide knobbly tyres on this bike. They're Rangers, WTB Ranger 2.4, but they run pretty nice on pavement too, to get where I need to go. It was about almost 2 hours of just pure climbing to get to the top. In the beginning it seems kind of daunting, but you get in the rhythm and get in the zone and almost enjoy the climbing. And you may have noticed I'm on another solo trip. In a couple of videos ago I talked about how your best memories will be with other people, and riding with other people is really nice. But I love solo rides just as much. Most humans are walking contradictions, or riding contradictions. We can like two different things at different times, or at the same time. Someone in one of my videos asked about how I find motivation to ride alone. It's something I never really thought about, it's just something I had inside of me. The motivation is a bike ride, which is my favourite part of my day. I think for me I've made it such a part of my life that I don't need the motivation, it's just how I get around and do things. But I guess for a trip like this you do need some motivation and planning. So some top tips for finding motivation to ride by yourself. I think setting a goal, so plan somewhere you want to ride to. It could be a cafe, it could be to go and meet a friend in the end, it could be a mountain you want to get up to. Just set some kind of scenic location or a target. Maybe starting small is a good idea. As I said before, a 5-minute bike ride could be the best part of your day. So you could just start with a 5-minute loop near your house. Riding alone, you just got to try and enjoy the freedom. So solo riding gives you the freedom to ride at your own pace, choose your own route, stop whenever you want, take as many photos as you want, have as many snacks as you want. Just embrace the freedom and independence. Using it as me time, so time to clear your mind, reflect, disconnect from daily stress of your life. Just a good opportunity for mindfulness. Some people maybe aren't so comfortable with their own thoughts. So maybe you could put one headphone in and listen to a podcast. I quite often have a podcast in one ear, leaving the other ear to listen to traffic and any dangers. Talking of traffic, this is the last spot of this ride for a while that's going to have any cars, and the last place I can pick up some food before I go on the gravel path. There's a small menu at this place, but I've heard that the potato pancakes, the kamjajeon, is really good. I'm not sure about this penis juice or whatever it is. I think it's one of those drinks that's good for stamina. Here's my kamjajeon, potato pancake. It's kind of like a rosti, but it's a little more chewy inside, so crispy on the outside and chewy inside. This is one of the best I've ever had. I had little slices of 청양고추, some Korean chili, with a nice perfect amount of heat. Glorious. And of course I left a clean plate. And now the part of the ride that I came here for, onto the gravel paths. This is part of the trail called Untangodo, an old coal mining vehicle trail that's still around for people like us to enjoy riding our bikes, and lots of hikers as well. A mix of kind of smoother gravel and some chonkier stuff too. Last year with the monthly bikepacking crew, I just couldn't believe how fun this road was. I came on the Atlantis, which was maybe one of the more capable bikes of all the bikes there, with its wider tyres. But the Susie was just another level of enjoyment with the wider tyres and bigger wheels. Time to let out a bit of air for a bit of extra suppleness, and down we go. I added this lovely bell to my bike, which I picked up in the Hasegawa shop in Tokyo, but the bumpy roads kept on making the spring hit the bell. It might be good for a single track ride, letting hikers know that I'm coming down. I found it a little bit annoying, so I had to tie something around it. Perfect for the city, not for this kind of ride. Once you're up the top, it's kind of up and down, not too much climbing, and a few fun descents as well. Plenty of hikers and a few other cyclists to say hello to. And an abundance of komorebi. There's lots of signs around saying no cars, no motorbikes. But there are still a few 4x4s with their number plates taped up. Luckily very few, so I could enjoy these paths in peace without worrying about a car coming past or coming the other way. I think this route is possibly one of my favourites in Korea. The gravel paths are super fun, and because you have a big climb at the beginning, you're just soaring at the top with incredible views the whole time. I just stopped so many times for photos. And a lot of the hiking groups were super friendly, especially some of the ajashis, the Korean uncles. I feel like there's almost nothing they love more than seeing someone going through physical hardship, like cycling up a steep hill. The joy in their face and the way they shout "fighting" is very motivating and quite sweet. So the way to a Korean uncle's heart is cycling up steep hills, I guess. Occasionally stopping for some wasabi almonds. I'll save the kimbap for later. Somehow this Korean almond company has made this huge empire, despite not growing a single almond in Korea. They're delicious nonetheless. As I said before, this is the first trip out of the city with my Rivendell Susie, or Hwang Suji as I call it. Hwang is a common family name in Korea, it can also mean yellow, and Suji is a person's name as well, and it just sounds like Susie. I just thought it was a fun Korean name for my bike. Hwang Suji. I used to name all my bikes, but now Rivendell already give them quite human names already. And cool names, so it's finally good to name my own Rivendell. Similar to its original name, but my own. I've really enjoyed commuting and riding around the city on this bike. It is a slow commuter, but it's supremely comfortable. It's really big, it's super long, and you feel really high up as well. And I like the width of these KT bars. But it really is made for these kind of roads. It's perfect. The 29-inch wheels with the thick tyres really soaks up the chunky gravel, and the long wheelbase makes it feel so stable. I've got the double crank as well, and it just climbs really smoothly. I feel like it's my best climbing bike. Some of the Korean uncles were intrigued and confused by it. They were on some proper mountain bikes and they were surprised how heavy my bike was, and they all took turns in lifting it up. And I tried to explain that to me the weight isn't really important. If it's comfortable enough and has good enough gearing, then it's the perfect bike, I think, for this kind of road. They're also confused by the droop tube, because it's not quite a step through, but it's just to help with standover so you can have a bigger bike for yourself. I sound like a Rivendell salesman at the moment. I just really like their bikes. I have no affiliation, I'm just a customer. But for these roads it certainly met, perhaps even surpassed my expectations. I've been scouting a coffee spot. I want somewhere with a good view, and I found the perfect place. This 2-story jongja. Let's make some coffee. This could go back to motivations for solo riding. If you have something like making a coffee outside or even cooking a meal outside, your goal could be to find a scenic place to do that. So your focus is on finding this kind of place for your coffee outside. I also have a new coffee toy that I want to try out. It's the Hario Switch. And I've got some delicious travertine beans as well. They started roasting fairly recently, and I think their beans are extremely delicious. But back to the Hario Switch. It's made of glass, so it's probably a terrible thing to bring on a bike trip. But I just bought it and I really wanted to use it. I love the V60 pour over coffee at home, but I feel like it's not the best camping coffee because there's too many variables to get wrong. I think the AeroPress is probably the best because it's just delicious despite different variables. But the Switch is kind of a mix between the two, so it can have the immersion brewing like with the AeroPress where the coffee and the water is staying together, and then you have a switch with a ball bearing that's blocking the water coming out. If you switch that, the water will come out and the percolation will happen and the water will drip through the coffee and through the filter. So it's like a mix of a more full-bodied immersion brew with the clean flavour of a percolation filter brew. Just go and watch James Hoffman's video about it. He's much more articulate and knowledgeable than me about coffee. I do the usual bloom with a small amount of water and then add the rest of the water and leave it for a couple of minutes. And when you flick the switch, it's very satisfying to see the water zoom down. The James Hoffman swirl. And today it produced a very delicious cup of coffee. When you're camping, it's harder to control the temperature of the water and other variables. But I think it's not the most ideal camping coffee maker, but I was glad I brought it this time. Back on the road after an immensely enjoyable coffee. I almost made another one. But I know when to stop. I didn't want the coffee anxiety jitters. But it was time to stop off for some of my kimbap. Taken in the view like this. The cloud is beginning to cover, but we have a few little hints of autumn foliage coming through. Last year we came at the peak. It was absolutely beautiful. But it's still beautiful now with mostly green with little tips of colour. Is a small remnant of the old history of this road. One of the entrances to the coal mines. I think it must have been a pretty intense, difficult job commemorated with a statue of this mine worker with this cute little doshirak, his lunchbox. All of today's ride is the same as what I did last year with monthly bikepacking, so it felt very familiar. And I arrived, not the royal we, it's just me. I arrived at the camping spot where we camped last year by this little pond. I'm not camping this time because I didn't want to carry too much stuff on my bike. But I'll enjoy the rest of my kimbap while the other people are setting up their tents just behind me. And I'm sure there will be plenty more tents by the end of the day. It's quite a famous, popular spot for camping. It's time to descend to the nearest town where I'm staying for the night. And I'll be riding back up to this point in the morning. It was a long descent down to the town with some bittersweet enjoyment because I knew I had to cycle back up it in the morning.
On my moon. Please forgive me, baby, but you got me on my knees. It's time for me to go. I got to kill this disease. Blast off, going away. Blast off.
Down into the old mining town of Sabuk, through the market, and ready for a wholesome dinner of sambap. This was cheuk sambap, so it came with lots of different leaves to wrap your spicy pork and rice in. The leaves are different mustard leaves, lettuce leaves, perilla leaves, all with different flavours. Really wholesome way to get your food inside, and you take it in one go. You don't bite out of your lettuce. Plenty of clean bowls. Usually this kind of meal you have to have for 2 people, but this restaurant had a menu for 1. Glorious. After an amazing meal, I went back to my guest house and slept like a log. I was so relaxed in the morning, I was contemplating just cycling down the hill where there was a bus terminal and just heading back to Seoul, because the thought of climbing again back up to the pond was kind of scary. But then I thought to myself, I made all this effort to come all this way and had a whole amazing day of riding. I've got to go and do the next day, especially as this is the part of the path that I couldn't do last year, and it was the main reason I came back, to finish the course. A ride back into town to pick up some supplies. I need some breakfast and I need some snacks for when I get to the top of the mountain. Breakfast, a Korean classic, a Paris baguette, or Paris baguette. I think if you come to a foreign country and expect exactly the same taste as home, you'll be disappointed. So I like to get things that you can only get here, like this coffee bread. Very high calorie for a good ride, and it's got this coffee, buttery, flavoury goodness inside. Good breakfast to give me power up the hill. And across the road, another day, another kimbap. I just think it's a good ride snack. It's not too big, but it packs up some good flavour. And even in the countryside nowadays, you order through a machine. The rest of the shop still looks the same as it has been for a long time. I got a tuna and a pickled chili kimbap. Excited to try it later on. And gummy sweets are the best thing if you're running out of energy. Got some peach and grape flavoured local ones. Let's start climbing. Despite my lethargicness of the morning, I was feeling pretty strong after yesterday's riding. And the hill was steep and long, but it went much faster than I anticipated. And I was excited to see what kind of riding the day would bring, because most of the path today was new to me. My main goal was to get to the bus terminal in Yeongwol in time to have a buckwheat pancake before. One of my favourite spots in that town. In my daily riding, I definitely don't stretch enough, but on these longer rides I usually remember to. With my ageing bones and joints, that's definitely something we all need to do to keep mobile. I'm no Mr. Motivator, but I'm just happy that I'm feeling strong and can do these kind of rides by myself. Back at the pond at the top of the hill, the campers had finished packing up. I'm pretty sure I had a better sleep than them, but they didn't have to climb back up the hill to start their day. Quite a few people here already, some people on their electric mountain bikes, and a few hikers, taking some photos for their memories. And now some time for some free-flowing gravel paths. The whole day I was just thinking about how I certainly made the correct decision to do today's ride. It's always the better choice to choose to ride your bike, I think. Unless you're really struggling. The weather wasn't quite as glorious as the blue skies of yesterday, but this second half of the ride I think had better views and more variety. You may have noticed around my bags I've strapped my rainbow straps to keep them tight close to the bike. No matter how many bags I have, I'm going to overfill them. If I had fewer bags, I'd probably have enough stuff. It'd still be overfilled. If I had 3 or 4 more bags, I would just bring more stuff and they would all be overfilled. I can't help it. I just love carrying non-essentials like coffee outside equipment. It wasn't too heavy and it didn't impact the handling of the bike. In fact, you wouldn't really even notice the bags were there when you're riding. A lot of the cycling and hiking trails here have stamp books and different stamping stations for you. I'm not doing the whole hike, so I didn't have a stamp book. But I did have a coffee filter, so I could collect a stamp just at this one. I'm not really extrinsically motivated by collecting these things like stamps. I'd rather collect memories, but it is a nice touch that I think the majority of people would be motivated to do, and Korea does very well. This guy just zoomed up on his electric bicycle. There are a lot more mountain bikers on the trail today, and we're kind of taking turns overtaking each other, catching each other's tails.
Waiting in the silence, the shadows flicker wild to dance with the light. And I'm a candle melting, softened by the heat of your ancient fire.
Today was so peaceful and chilled. On a multi-day trip, on the first day, riding by myself, sometimes I wish someone else was there, now and again. But on the second day, I feel completely at ease and relaxed and mindful, enjoying my own company. Today was one of those days. Since I posted the video about my new bike day, I've had a couple of additions. Brooks gave me this B17 special. Thank you, Brooks. B17 is one of my favourite saddles. I think it's just the most comfortable and best looking. I've always wanted the special with its copper rivets and copper rails. I also picked up the king cage bottle cage from Bike Makes Me Happy, and this golden bell that I talked about earlier from Hasegawa Bicycle Sales. And my badge in prime position from Rivsock in Japan, Rivendell Bicycle Society. Thanks to them. Kimbap to fuel me through the weekend. Can eat it like a burrito if you don't have any chopsticks. Glorious. Not a car for miles. I love the silence of being in the forest away from the cars. And having this bike path or hiking path completely to myself and a few other cyclists. I was making good progress through the day. Remember, I have to get to Yeongwol for a buckwheat pancake before my bus. I think if I got a flat tire, I might be cutting it fine. But luckily, fingers crossed, I won't get any. I've got my bike set up with tubes. I always thought I might put this one tubeless because I'm going to be riding it off-road. But I just can't be bothered. I find tubeless is good until it's not good. And then it's a disaster. Tubes are good enough and easy enough to change. But maybe people will say the same thing about tubes. They're good until they're not good. Sometimes if you get a puncture once, you might get recurring ones quite frequently. But they're all good for my ride today. There's no right or wrong. You can like tubes, you can like tubeless, you can even like both. The other person isn't wrong or stupid for liking the other thing. Time for another coffee outside. I think I'll do a similar recipe as yesterday. I'm still fine-tuning my skills with this because it's very new to me. I do about 15 grams of coffee for 250 grams of water or millilitres of water, same thing. A 30-second bloom with about 50 millilitres. Maybe less, 40. I don't have a scale, so it's kind of by eye at the moment. And the rest of the water, and leave it to sit for 2 minutes before draining. And then the James Hoffmann swirl, and you have a stunning cup of coffee. We're almost at the end of the trail and we're entering signs of life. This huge mountainous farm. I think we're a bit late for the autumn harvest, and a lot of the fields are empty and brown now. There are still lots of apple orchards, cabbage fields. I wonder what else they grew here over the summer. This area felt quite different to any other part of Korea I've been to before. It actually felt like I was in a different country. I haven't seen a farm up in the mountains like this, and this vast as well. From here it was an endless descent, basically all the way to the city of Yeongwol. And there was no bittersweetness this time, just pure enjoyment, because I knew I wasn't going to have to ride up it again. We've descended down to the main roads. Nowadays there's lots of highways going through the mountains, so these windier roads are much quieter for cycling. It's kind of the cycling I'm more used to in Korea with my touring bike and panniers. The gravel roads for a couple of days is quite new to me because they're hard to find longer ones. It's usually just a day ride on the gravel roads. I love riding through these small countryside villages and seeing remnants of their past, and things like these sesame seeds being dried. It was a meandering ride to Yeongwol, slightly downhill the whole way, with people riding on the wrong side of the road and the relaxed pace of countryside living. There was some rain forecast, so in addition to my deadline of buckwheat pancakes, I also had the deadline of the rain coming. A slight drizzle, which was refreshing, and enjoying the view of these sunflower-lined roads. Today was about 60 kilometres with 1,000 metres of elevation, same as yesterday, and I felt like I could have kept on going much longer. But I only had the weekend for riding. I wish I could just keep going and going for a few more days. It was really cool to be able to get the bus to one town, cycle to the next town, and then another town, and get the bus home without having to do a loop. That's the great thing about being able to put your bike in a bus over here, and the abundance of bus terminals in every city, all going back to Seoul. Now we're in Yeongwol, my wife's happy place. We come around here on holiday quite often, but I've never ridden into it before. And we have our favourite buckwheat pancake place in the local market in the town centre. It's run by a mother and daughter who were very welcoming and recognised me from our many visits before. It's a lovely little traditional market with old butchers, fried chicken, all the pangakgan where they dry chilies and grains and mill them. Basically everything you need. A 15-minute city. Time for some buckwheat pancakes. This market has dozens of buckwheat pancake shops, but we always go to the same one. If you ever go, it's the one with number 3. They have ones with wraps with spicy kimchi, fried kimchi inside. There's a flat with salted cabbage. I did just order one of each in the beginning and got the same again, because it certainly wasn't enough. Don't worry, I left a trail of clean bowls behind me. I planned my day well. I had enough time for my buckwheat pancakes, and I had a bit of time to spare waiting at the bus terminal. The bus was waiting, so I had plenty of time to put my bike in without any stress of the bus driver waiting for us to leave. Another charming countryside bus terminal, which will no doubt be knocked down in a few years for something fancier. But I understand the desire for, especially older Koreans, desire for modernization, because they lived through a struggle and the country developed so quickly, and they want to have more new, modernized, comfortable places. But I'm just a sucker for old school charm. Getting the bus back on Sunday night is glorious, because you just fly past the traffic. There's a bus lane for the buses, and all the traffic getting into Seoul is hell. A quick 3-hour bus later, no delays. I'm in the bright lights of Seoul. I was only away for 1 night and 2 days, but it feels like I was away for much longer than that. That's the benefit of taking a trip away and resetting your mind. It's always kind of a shock being back in Seoul, even after such a short time. There's a sensory overload with so many people and bright lights and things going on. Clearly enough, I arrived back at the express bus terminal, which is much closer to my house, and just a short trip over Jamsu Bridge to get home. Every Sunday when the weather's good, in the spring and autumn, they have this car-free bridge. I think it's a really nice idea, removing cars, making the space for the people. But I think they're missing a trick, because it's also a bike-free bridge. I think there's enough space for having the bike lane and still the space for the people and the stalls. And I think that would be a true kind of car-free utopia. But I'm just biased. Sometimes bikes are treated the same as cars, but I think they're much safer, better for the air, and should be involved in a car-free bridge scheme like this. Maybe next year. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for joining. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. See you later.